is going to be about some of my experiences in my career as an accountant, what I have done, because we talked about this week the different kinds of accounting and what they are. So I just wanted to go over the different areas that I have been in my career and let you know some of my experiences, so you can maybe learn from that a little bit, or learn a little bit more about me, and if you have any questions. I excuse me, graduated from Southwestern with my bachelor's, and I went to work. Actually, I moved to Kansas City and went to work for a medical clinic there that had 28 clinics across the United States, and I was in charge their daily cash reporting and monthly close for half of those, or a third of those. There were 3 staff accountants, so I was in charge of closing for a third of those clinics, and mine were on the East Coast that I had responsibility for closing. But most of our work was actually done in Excel in those days, and we also used a program called, which still is Excel, it hasn't gone away, and a program called Peachtree, which is very old, and I don't even know if it's still around. I think it might be, but it is an old program that we used there. So we did a lot of bank reconciliations, like I said, daily cash. I did the monthly close, which were journal entries, and that's what I did for that company. And when you work in accounting, you see, I also got to see their profit and loss, and so you see what is happening in the company, and you see when they close a business or close one of the clinics, and you kind of see the writing on the wall. So I knew what was happening there, and I started looking for another job when I felt like things were not going the best there as far as profitability. And since I was the last one hired, I knew that I would probably be the first one laid off. And so I started looking for a job, and I found a job at a publishing company that was a trade magazine company in Overland Park. And we had 36 trade magazine publications for 2 divisions, and I was staff accountant there. The medical clinic, by the way, did close at that point. It was probably about 6 months after I left, they did close. So, and I went to work for the publishing company, and the 2 divisions had over $100 million in revenues and over 300 personnel, and I was in charge of the monthly closing under the business manager, and I did that for about I'd say about a year, and I was promoted. They split the divisions, and I was promoted to business manager of one of the divisions. So at that point, I was in charge myself of 5 locations with 2 billing systems and over 51 million in revenues. And I had responsibility for all the financial reporting and processing, budgeting, forecasting, account reconciliation, auditing for accounts payable, receivables, and payroll. And I managed the entire profit center, and I was actively a participant in the strategy and decision making of going forward with what happened with the magazine. So that was the second step in my career, and I had a small child at that point, and I worked a lot of hours. So I did that for about 3 years, and I missed a lot. So I got burnout, and I started that happens quickly if you work a lot of hours, and I started looking for, it was like 12-hour days and 16-hour days at some points during month end. So I started looking for another position where I could have a little bit more free time, which in accounting sometimes you just don't have that at month end. My son used to say, I'd say it's month end, and he'd say, again? He said, it's always month end. Which now he's 27, so he doesn't say that anymore. I went to work for a company called Huhtamaki, which owns Trinet. They are a Finnish company, and so that was my first and only experience with international accounting standards. It was quite interesting. I was in charge of their asset management there. They had over 20,000 assets, and I tracked them on a fixed asset management system called BEST Software Management. And I was in charge of tracking and reporting a $30 million capital budget for all of their divisions, and reporting it to their company headquarters in Espoo, Finland. So that was my large responsibility there. I also did report the monthly close process for 3 of 6 divisions, consolidating the financial information on a software program called Hyperion Enterprise. So that was another one of my career experiences. And that was a interesting time because during that time 9/11 happened, so there was a lot of uneasiness there for a time, especially with a company that was overseas. Finland wasn't. It was an uneasy time for everyone. So it was just an awkward time for accounting and for companies in general. So at that point, I started looking for a role where I could get more responsibility, and there was an ad in the paper for a controller for the Kansas City Star, which was the largest newspaper. I'm sure you, well, maybe not all of you, but it's the largest newspaper in the area around here. And I became the suburban controller over 3 suburban newspapers in the Kansas City metro area. So I was in charge of all of their financial reporting, processing, budgeting, forecasting. I did all of the account reconciliations, credit and collections, audit requests, payroll processing, monthly management reports to all of the publishers of all of the newspapers, and to the publisher of the Kansas City Star, who was over them. I participated in the operations and decision making with the group publisher, and I also supervised finance personnel at each property. They helped me to do the day-to-day items that needed to be done at each property, and they also helped me with month-end close at each property. I also, at that point, there was a time when we were, they decided that we needed to use outside resources, and we went to India, and so we had to work with some people from India to help us with our collection calls, and also circulation at that point. Some of it went to India as well, some of the call center. So I had some experience with outsourcing and helping people, train people for that. After working there for about 7 years, they created a position that I was promoted to called Director of Credit and Collections. This was like I said, a new position that they created. And I began reviewing all credit applications, and I collected all past due accounts for the entire Star family of newspapers, magazines, digital, everything. I just started, I had a team, and we started collecting on bad debt or current debt. I reported directly to the CFO and was actively involved in the decision making and strategy. So I had a staff of 3, and I had 3 employees in India that I worked with. So we monitored all payments, and we posted all payments in our department. And that was a revenue of over $151 million. And with that, only 1% was bad debt and expense in the year that I was Director of Credit and Collections. Now I say the year because after I was promoted to that, they unfortunately, in the newspaper world, they were downsizing. So they decided to downsize that position. So I was laid off from the Kansas City Star, and at that point I took the opportunity to move back to Winfield. Sorry, it quit recording. I hope I said I took the opportunity to move back to Winfield. So I worked in the aircraft industry as an accounts receivable team lead. That was the first job I could get, and so I was releasing sales orders and dealing with credit issues. And I've worked in credit. I worked in credit for 3 years after I moved down here. I dealt with credit risk and reviewed credit files, and really did a daily monitoring of credit, which is what I ended up at the Kansas City Star. That was my history, and that's what people hired me on, was the credit. And that is not my favorite part of accounting. So I really wanted out of that. I don't mind. I like reviewing the financial statements. I love the analytical part of it. I don't so much like collecting on past due accounts and that. So that is not my favorite part of accounting. For those of you that go into accounting, maybe that will be. Then I got my dream job, actually, which is crazy. I would never have thought I would work for in the prison system as a business manager. It's more of a controller position. I do a little bit of everything. I'm in charge of finance. I'm in charge of maintenance. I'm in charge of the warehouse and procurement. I'm in charge of the laundry. I am actually in charge of 2 locations in Winfield and Wichita, but I work about 7 minutes from my home, and I really enjoy that. So I do month-end close. We really don't have a lot of month-end close. My accountant 3 does the month-end close. Mine is mainly budgeting, it's forecasting, it's monitoring purchases, it's keeping track of expenses, it is keeping us on track, because in governmental accounting you're given a certain amount of money by the government, and that is all you get to spend. You can't sell anything else to make more money, and you have to fit essentially a square peg into a round hole. So you have so much money that is appropriated to you for the year, and that's it. So you have your fixed expenses, you have your payroll, and everything else you just have to fit in there. So that's what I do. I do a lot of capital planning. I do a lot of, put out a lot of fires. So that is my current job, and I also last year started teaching. So you can use your accounting degree for teaching, which I really enjoy. So this has gone a little bit long, but so if you guys have any questions about your assignments or anything else that you want to ask me, like I said, get in touch with me. Hope you have a great weekend, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye!